You didn't get?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Let me just see where I am. There you go.
The world of Hillel.
This
The world
is
of Hillel.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good. And there's another one for this one?
We're going to finish chapter 3, God willing. We're going to finish chapter 3. And then we go to chapter 4, which is called chapter 3 because I guess I didn't fix it. Like I say, it's all about the editing. Okay? Wow. Cool.
Is this
Okay.
what you're writing now?
Yes. The only way I'm going to do it is if I teach it. And then maybe I'll do it. Okay? Close it. Yeah, please. Thanks. Loud phone conversation. Okay. Okay, so there's a great passage in the Talmud. Classic passage. Everybody, a lot of people know this, are familiar with this, where these two people, this is the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Lamed Aleph 31. These two people were made a wager for a considerable sum of money. Who can make Hillel angry? Because they always, obviously they're talking like, no one can make him mad, man. Right? Oh yeah, I can make him angry. I got a way. I got a special technique. No one, that's not going to happen. Right? So they made a wager, and of course, the guy comes on Erev Shabbos, Friday afternoon, when Hillel was in a shower, bathing, right? And he's banging on the door, and he goes, Hillel, where's Hillel, where's Hillel? Hillel gets out, he covers himself, and he kindly asks the man if he could help him in any way. And the man says, I have such a burning question. Rabbi, you got to help me out. And he says, well, ask, what is it? So he says, why do the Babylonian people have weird-shaped heads?
I thought it was round heads.
Weird-shaped. Because they weren't, and again, so, okay, and Hillel responded, such a good question. It's because the inexperienced midwives in the birth process, so the children get weird-shaped heads in the birth canal. Because it forms the heads of the, that's why you'll see babies who are, they do a cesarean, perfectly round heads. Okay? And those who are not cesarean, usually there's some kind of, it's symmetrical. But let's say if you're really a bad, inexperienced midwife, and who knows what goes in terms of the process of the birth, I haven't done it, so sorry, can't say I'm an experienced birther. But his answer was because obviously the midwives were inexperienced, and they come out of the birth canal, and their heads have that shape. Okay? Okay. He left. He came back a little while later, and he asked another question. Right? He bangs on the door. Hillel, where's Hillel? Where's Hillel? Okay? So, Hillel comes out of the shower, right? And Hillel comes out of the shower, and he says, what is it, my son? What can I help you with? And he says, I got this burning question. He says, why, right, do such and such a people have soft eyes? Really, it's like slanty eyes.
Not tender eyes.
He's really asking why the Chinese people have slanty eyes. Why are they like this? Okay? It's a good question, he says. I mean, I don't know why a person needs to know this on Friday afternoon when most people should be getting together their needs for Shabbos. I don't understand also why how long it takes Hillel to bathe, right? Okay?
But he interrupted his bath.
In any case, he wrapped himself in the head again to make sure he doesn't catch a cold, and he goes out and he greets this person, and he says, what's bothering you? So Hillel responded in the same tone, responding, that's a big question. And he answered, because they live in a sandy place where winds blow frequently. So obviously if winds blow, this is an interesting idea, and I did see a commentary inside, which actually agrees with, I don't know what we'll call it, but where the species in the various environment there, or the climate, or whatever have you, will adapt to the environment. So therefore he says, well, the reason is because there was a sandy place, winds blow, and they blow the sand, so in order for people they developed a protective thing about their eyes, that their eyes were like this. This is what he says. Whether that's true, and I don't know if he's referring specifically to the Chinese, spot, or Japanese or Korean or whatever, why their eyes are like that, I don't know. But in any case, okay, the language really is soft eyes, okay? So he responded because of the sandy winds. But anyway, there was an intimation here that this is why the winds are blowing, and that's why they had developed their eyes the way they are. So he comes back a third time. Again, Hillel comes out, wraps his head, towel, blanket, whatever. Ask my son, I got such an important question. Burning. Okay? Why is such and such a people have wide feet? Referring to actually people in Africa. Okay? Why do they have such wide feet, these people? And so Hillel responds, that's a great question. It's because they live in a swampy area. If you live in a swampy area where there's no basis for holding, it gives you a better traction. So obviously their feet developed a way that they can go ahead and move around in the area that what they were raised in, so therefore they developed these kind of flat, wide feet that enables them to move around. Okay? And then, of course, just to finish it off, this is the third try that this person tried to make Hillel angry, and he bet a lot of money on it, like 400 zuzim, right? The person finally admits, right, that he lost the bet. He says, darn it, I hope there's no more like you in Israel. And Hillel goes, why? He says, because I just lost 400 zuz because I was supposed to get you angry. And he says, it's better that Hillel never gets angry. Better you lose 400 zuzim than Hillel gets angry. Okay? So that's the Gemara. That's the passage in the Talmud. Familiar with most people, right? It always tickled me because I was like, amazing how you can look in the Talmud and you can get answers to certain questions. But of course, it's much deeper than that. Okay? Of course, it's telling you like a person should always have the humility of Hillel and not to get angry. And of course, we have such a display, such a role model of such a person who's in such a situation, Erev Shabbos, in the shower. Right? Once I had one of my friends try to bug me when I was in the shower, banging on the window. I'm like, what? Okay, right? So the Maharsha asks this question, and it's such a dynamic idea in terms of what we've been working on in chapter 3, which is all about perceptions. How we look at things. Okay? So the Maharsha asks, this guy came with ridiculous questions. Why is Hillel responding every time, great question? Okay? Because that's what he is. Every single time he comes back and he says, that's a great question. Now, what is he doing? He's not placating the guy. He's not flattering this person, right? Wow, that's such a good question, right? If you go to that, certain people are going like, that's a ridiculous question, right? A lot of people, many students have been thrown out of the class because they ask stupid questions. Okay, we try not to do that anymore. But to say, wow, that's such a great, deep question, where's Hillel coming from? Okay? So the answer is, and this is so unbelievable, okay, is that Hillel's perception was completely different than what the person, and all of his intention was coming to anger Hillel. And yet Hillel was living in a completely different world, in a completely different dimension. So amazing. So mind you and me, we would all have the cops and have this guy arrested and have maybe a court order that he should come, a restraining order. He should not come anymore within 50 feet of the house. Okay? That's what we would probably do because he's absolutely a disturbing individual coming with silly questions. But that's not Hillel's way. And that's, of course, how we have to move to. Rather, Hillel actually had a different experience. He viewed this as an opportunity to bring light into the world. How so? I understand that, of course, to treat everybody with love and patience. But to the degree where you're going to say that's a good question, each one of those questions, in his perception, was a deep question related to a Torah principle, and his answers were matching those questions. In other words, guy X is asking a question in order to get him angry. He comes up with a stupid question. But Hillel is going, whoa, That's an amazing question. Completely different experience.
The one about the shape of the Babylonian heads was particularly insulting since Hillel was born in Babylonia.
Maybe that's why. I don't know.
I didn't see it as a personal thing.
I didn't know that he was born in Babylonia. Thank you for that information. I didn't know where he was born. It's either Israel or Babylonia. Okay? In any case, okay, I'm not up on the geography. Okay? But here he was coming with, he was looking at it in a completely different way. In Hillel's perception, he understood this question, this person, asking about the three evil character traits of the world. Okay? That's how he interpreted it. So these three evil character traits are an inflated spirit, the evil eye, and gluttony. Okay? So when he was coming with the first question and asking about the weird-shaped heads, so Hillel's total view, interpretation, total experience is as if this is God coming to me, the Shekhinah is coming, and he wants to awaken me to something higher. And he's bringing it in the form of this person, and he asks this question, and Hillel's going, this is about the inflated spirit. The first question, when the man was asking about the head of the Babylonians, he was inquiring concerning the sin of the leaders in Babylon who had lost their wealth. So it's like, why are the Babylonians have weird-shaped heads? If you look in the language, it could be construed in a way of the heads, have lost their wealth. And that's what Hillel was answering based on that. That was his perception of it. Hillel responded that the reasons the Babylonians' heads were rolled is because they didn't have chayot pekuchot. Chayot pekuchot literally could mean, chayot pekuchot is midwives, okay, who are smart, okay? But really, if you look at chayot pekuchot in another way, literally it's smart midwives. They didn't have those. But another interpretation is that their inflated spirit overpowered them, and their wits didn't have the life energy, which means they lost their wits, because anyone with pride is considered an imbecile and out of their mind. Okay, the point of the matter is that although the person came to him with one thing in mind, in Hillel's experience it was completely different, go figure. And he goes that way with the other ones, which I didn't bring here because it would get too lengthy, to go into the other ideas. The point here is how you view it. How are you responding to reality? And a lot of times what happens is we can even, thank God, we all have the quality or the potential of being what we call tamim. Tamim is a great quality. But some people interpret tamim as being naive. Okay? Which I balance between both of them. And people would think if a person now, unfortunately, when we look at the term naive, that's a negative connotation. Not really seeing the truth. Okay? Now, of course you have to be a pikeach. You have to be smart. Okay? But then there's a certain area where you have to have what we call mind blockage. And it's a good thing. I once heard Beryl Wine saying, if a person is going to go into a position of leadership in the community, he has to have a certain brain scratch or mind blockage. Okay? Because what happens is he's going to get affected. It's going to deepen what he's going to experience, what all the craziness that goes on in the community is going to affect him in a certain way, and it's going to affect him deeply. And it could damage him. So you have to have a certain we have a shield, where certain things are just going to bounce off of you. A shell of sorts. Naive means tam. Tam means whole, right? Which means also more directly simple or simplistic. To go simple. Not with sophistication. You can go read the story of Rabbi Nachman of the simpleton and the sophisticate. Okay? It's a great story if you're not familiar with it. It's one of the most dynamic stories. And Rabbi Nachman's... Oh, it's not so long. Yes. What? Sure. There we go. Thanks. So with the idea of being a little bit of having this sliver or section or part of our minds, which can be a shield or have this tamimus, simplicity, right? So then it enables us to see things that other people might be coming with their own stuff. Don't forget, everything's an ink blot. We are always bringing to it, coming from our own limited experience. And therefore, what you see in this certain situation, other people might not be seeing that. And now we're a little bit smarter because we know that's okay. Because they're only coming from their own selves. And I'm coming from where I'm coming from. And so therefore, when we'll see a certain situation, we'll go, wow, this guy's asking a really deep question. And your friends who are next to you going, what are you telling me? This guy's an idiot. The guy's a total fool. Are you kidding me? This guy's trying to make you angry? And you're just so cool? How can you be so cool like that? And they might even try to influence you to see things, get out of your naivete, right? And see it for what it really is. Don't you understand this guy's whole intention was to get you angry? That wasn't Hillel's experience. So, Baruch Hashem, you can allow yourself from now on to see things in a much different way. As if what? As of course to Hillel, the way Hillel lives his life, everything is the Shekhinah. Okay? The real masters are understanding that the dimension that we're walking through, that we're living in, that we're breathing in, is the dimension of the Shekhinah. And so when we're experiencing the Shekhinah. Or you can choose a different experience, something less than that. You get to choose. Are you going to look at it as this is like a prophecy that is coming to me for my own growth? Or are you going to look at it as it's some guy's trying to annoy me? And you get to choose. And so Hillel gives us the unbelievable paradigm of how we can choose. And even though the person's intention is to make you angry and to annoy you, you can choose to live in a completely different dimension, right? And a completely different reality with joy and growth and understanding how we can affect the world and change the world. Yeah.
I've heard people say we should always experience everything as a manifestation of Hashem's love. Is that more or less the same thing as, no?
Absolutely.
Yes?
Absolutely. God wants us to grow, loves us, he's crazy about us. Everything he's doing, everything God's doing is about building us to be vessels to receive the infinite light. And he's orchestrating all kinds of things, right, in our direct and indirect experience in order for us to grow. Every blade of grass has an angel standing over it, hitting it, telling it to grow. Okay, sometimes the smack is good. You need a wake up, okay? Or you could just choose to be wise and just do some introspection. If this person asked this, there's something deeper there. Because the Baal Shem Tov, and I always quote this, he says every single thing, every single little detail in your life is so perfectly orchestrated that you could be walking in the marketplace and you will hear some Gentile in a shopping mall, okay, or whatever, and he'll say, something, and you'll hear it, it'll enter your ears, there's something there for you. It's not random. Nothing is random. Now you have to live your life like that, okay, and you can, and we can. It's training. It's all about training, right? Got to reprogram ourselves and train to see things and experience things different. Conclusion. Here's the conclusion. So if you have patterns of seeing, thinking, and of course behaving a certain way, just know all those are merely habits. We discussed this before in this chapter. Our essence is our soul, and our body, with all of its mishigas, all of its craziness, are garments. They're not our essence. And this is a big thing. For when you put into the perspective of we are really soul and all the negative stuff are habits, then we can begin to loosen their grip on our state, our inner state. The most important thing in our inner state is joy. Joy and more joy. Simcha, simcha, simcha. Right? All those habits of thinking, all that fear and anxiety are nothing more than a habit. They're simply not who I really am. So now, I am now discovering, so now to creating the angel and the energy, and because the idea here is these are ideas that we're writing in this book, but the idea really is you have to start to move it from the head to the heart. You have to kind of vibrate. That's what creating the angel is about. It's a vibration. It has to make total sense to you. It has to be with conviction. So you have to say this with conviction, and if not, you can't say it. Make believe you can say it with conviction. That's a big thing, to make believe and picture yourself making that you're saying it with conviction. Okay? I am now discovering who I really am. And as I realize all that negative thinking of the past are habits, I can joyously let them go and adopt a higher grade of thinking. So now you kind of sit with that for a minute and let the feeling tone permeate all of the fibers of your being. It's like almost a waking meditation. I'm now discovering who I really am. As I realize that all the negative thinking of the past are habits, meaning I am totally soul. And all that, so I can shed them. I can joyously let them go and adopt a higher grade, a higher level of thinking. Okay? Maybe I've mentioned this before, but it's brought down that in the end of days, it says God will take the sheath off the sun. And it says the wicked will be burned by it and the righteous will be healed by it. How can it be if it's the same sun, the same sheath off the sun? It's because the righteous understand that their inner part of themselves, their soul, is their real essence. And all the external stuff, because that's what the sun does. The sun burns external. It doesn't burn internal. So the sun is going to burn the external. So the righteous people understand the external stuff. It all gets burned away. They're Baruch Hashem. I get to really be who I really am. Right? That's awesome. That's a healing. For the wicked people, their entire existence is in their externals. What car they drive, what clothes they wear, and everything like that, and how they look into the outside world. So therefore, if that burns off, that's their whole essence. And therefore, the wicked people are burned by it because they're putting their whole mind into their external part of themselves, their garment, as opposed to their internal part. Of course, their internal part remains, but there is nothing much left there, Senor. Okay? So that's chapter 3. I did need to share this with you because as we're dealing with perceptions, and I really usually don't like to get into something of a... 1 second. Okay. You can probably get this if you go and Google the work. Oh, the work by Byron Katie.
You know Byron Katie?
Yes. Because
is she still alive?
The most, of course.
Yes?
Oh, yes. We went and saw her a few years ago. She came to Houston. So the work of Byron Katie, I might have mentioned this before because don't forget, everything is a mirror. It's always reflecting us back to us, what's going on inside of us. So if you're upset by anything, right? So I gave this a sheet. You can also get it online. The amazing thing about this, and I told you that she did come to Jerusalem, gave some classes. Some of the rabbis in our yeshiva went and go and check out, right? Baruch Hashem, we were in a very open-minded yeshiva. We did read books about psychology and things like that to study human nature, only to help for us to grow and develop. So, of course, we were always curious. We never just blocked ourselves from any of that stuff. So if she came, people came and they observed. The rabbi said, there's some wisdom there. And there is. Because when you've studied some of the writings that we've gone over in this chapter from the Baal Shem Tov, you can see how, and here puts it into a real practical form. Okay? In other words, sometimes, and that's unfortunate because, we discuss some really great, deep stuff here that it's always, our flaws are reflecting back to us. Not enough the world has gotten it. Okay? Not enough. Thank God for this, even though really a lot of times I haven't read her books, but from everything that I've been exposed to, she doesn't really talk much about it. She's just more like, just do it. Okay? She's just do it. Okay? So here you can just look at it, and the important thing is that she does hold to write it on a paper. So in other words, you should have a stack of these if you're the person who's prone to get upset. Okay? Even about the slightest bit things that are upsetting, because this is about growth. So you should have a stack of these, and anytime something happens, and you find yourself caught in a maze, which means you're caught in a spiral, which means you're like churning over being upset. Sometimes it's hard for people to get off that wagon. So much energy is spent in the maze. Lifetimes of people are spent in the maze. We call it the maze because it's like you're just going around because you're just so wound up about being upset, and it doesn't matter the level of upset. If it's taken over your mind and the thoughts of your mind and your energy and how you're feeling, so you know how much energy is spent on that going around when it could be on other things, more creative. So to write it down is a great thing, because obviously it's that part of just expressing and getting it at least on the paper. So she says, write about a situation that feels unresolved in your life. Anything. It could be about a past or present relationship, your work, the body, family member, whatever it is, right? So it says, do not write about yourself yet, exclamation point. Please be judgmental. Here's where the part where you can let it go. Right? Uncensored and petty. Be as petty as you want to, because we all know now when we look at this what's going in store for us. But it's okay to let the gates open. Let the floodgates open. Don't be spiritual or kind. Right? We've been instructed for years not to judge, but it is still what we do best. And this is for a constructive purpose. Because we know this is where to be constructive about it. Write short, simple sentences. What is the worst that could happen? Right? Take the risk. Fill in the following blanks. So you write you have questions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay? Who or what don't you like? Right? Who could use your advice or suggestions? Who irritates you? What saddens you or disappoints you? So then you fill it in. Right? I don't like, or I'm angry at Bob because, and you fill it in. Anyways, I'm not going to go into this, just to let you do this on your own. It would be great to get together. One of my goals would be, as my wife has tried it, but unfortunately in the groups that she's tried to do this with, people really weren't ready for it because they don't want they don't want to look at themselves. They don't want to really do the work. This is for people who really want to do the work. Because what you do is after you fill out all these questions, of course, they would have people who've been instructed. Or you can use a friend. You can use anybody. Or you can even do it with yourself. And then you do what we call the ask the 4 questions. I didn't put that here, okay? But then there's what she has is the 4 questions, which is really common sense, okay? I don't have a copy of it now. I thought I did. I think I left it in. Anyways, she has a thing called asking the 4 questions, which is basically, is it true? You have to ask that all the time. About everything. Is it true? Right? Can I know that it's true? That's the number question. Right? Question number 3, what would you be without that thought? Okay, that's question number 3. No, sorry. Question number 3, sorry. How do I react when I think this thought? And she puts A, do I see a reason to drop this thought? That's A. I'll give you a sheet after this. I will make copies for you after. Do I see a reason that it is not stressful? Do I see a reason that is not stressful to keep this thought? In other words, can I keep this thought without having stress? Those are just like sub of 3. I'll give you, we'll make copies of this. And then question number 4 is how or who would I be without that thought? So you'll go over these, okay? These are the instructions. You just didn't have time to make photocopies for this, but you can go online and get it, okay? Let's go to thework.org. That's the website, thework.org.
You're going to copy them?
Yeah. So anyways, you ask these 4 questions, and then you'll turn all of these statements around, and you'll flip the statements. Instead of saying, I'm angry at Bob, I'm angry at me, and then you read the rest of the sentence. Okay, so you flip who you're talking about into yourself. And it's really talking about you. When you do that, then you'll see it just releases so much of the stuff. That's why it's just a brilliant work. It's really, I don't go into much of these methods, but this one is golden. All right. Okay, are we ready for chapter 4? We've got a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, did I give you guys sheets?
No.
Oh, good. Here we go. It's called really chapter 3. But that's because I forgot to change the title. Could be even chapter 4. Okay, here. 1 second. Okay. Okay, chapter 4. The law of cause and effect. Whew. Let me see. Yes, let's get to this. The masters of the inner wisdom know there is really no such thing as cause and effect. This is a really deep, deep principle. Because everybody really understands cause and effect in the world, and everybody will argue with. But when you understand it in a deep way, as we're going to see now, or I'm going to talk it out to you, they rather conclude that everything is the will of the infinite creative force. The Holy Oneness, may his revelation increase and expand, is the only cause to everything, not your boss, uncle, or the coffee. Gosh, I would really think it's the coffee, but you got to get off of it. Okay? So the idea really here that brings down, I was just bringing it down, that Rabbi Dessler brings this down in a kuntras, right? In one of his, did I bring the source here? Okay, he brings it down in his article that he talks about hashgacha, God's divine providence. And he explains, he goes through a discourse explaining that really everything is the will of God. How so? Well, basically, the way he explains it is, if, let's say, every single day at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, all over the world, all bodies of water would split, including the soup bowl. And it was like that for thousands of years, and you were raised in a world that was going on. The entire world was like that. And it was always like that. Everywhere in the world, all bodies of water would split for about a half an hour, and then go back. Okay? So obviously, we'd be raised in a world like that. We would have all kinds of explanations and scientific ways to explain how the magnetic forces or the winds or something like that, and we would come up with some idea, and we would accept it what's being called nature or teva, ha-teva.
We have that, flash floods that flood our streets for a few hours and it goes away. It dries up. Like yesterday.
Thank you. Right. Thank you. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Like, you know that sometimes it happens that a child of 2 or younger has a sickness or an automobile accident or something that happens to it. The child didn't do anything to deserve that. Why would Hashem send?
Now we don't know. Like bottom line, God is the cause to everything. Okay. And we don't know the reasons. We don't have the reason. We're not explaining here. What we're explaining is 2 different types of phenomenon.
So you don't have to say to the child, it serves you right.
Never.
Never.
We're not allowed. It's forbidden.
You can't even think it.
We don't know.
Hello.
We can't think it. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. We can't know. There's things way beyond. We're so limited in our perception. But listen to me. Follow me. So now if it was every single place in the earth, the waters, all bodies of water would split, we'd be used to it, right? We call it nature, right? And yet, meanwhile, every single day, what happens? We take a seed. We plant the seed in the ground. It goes into the ground and rots and dies. And from that death comes a sprout. Now that's pretty amazing, right? That's, we would call a miracle. You call that revival of the dead, yet we're used to it, right? Bottom line, there are miracles that we are used to, and then there's miracles that we're not used to. The miracle of the parting of the Red Sea was something that we were not used to. We call that an open miracle. And then there's everything that we are used to, which we call nature. But really, they're all miracles. Everything is a miracle. God is willing every single thing, every single second, that it exists. Scientists will explain that A goes to B, but they don't explain why A causes B. Now, they'll explain to you the seed in the ground rots and then decay and a certain level of the decay and then it sprouts, but why does that? And then, and he explains, he goes through, how that the sun evaporates the water that goes up and stops and it forms clouds, right? And it gets to a certain degree and then the wind moves it and then it drops. And they'll explain A to Z, but why they don't do.
Only how.
Only how. Right? So the idea here is there is no nature. As a matter of fact, we all know, all the Hasidic masters, Ha-Teva is the same numerical value as Elohim, God. So the idea really is there's two types of phenomena. You have hidden miracles and you have open miracles. But the bottom line is God is causing every single thing to exist every single moment. Okay? And that's what we have here in the language that I put it. The manifestation of that will, God's will, is experienced by us in one of two ways. Will manifest, that which we got used to, right? In which we call nature, and, right, should be will manifest, that we are not used to. And those we call miracles. Okay? They're both will manifest. It's God's will that is being expressed. But it's, right? It's basically what we got used to it and what we, say, take for granted, right? And then which we did not get used to.
Like birth of a child is a huge miracle.
Right.
And you just expect it to happen.
Right.
And we're so used to it, we're happy to dispose of it.
What?
Breathing, let's not get into that.
Yeah, okay.
Breathing, walking,
Yes.
moving your hands is a miracle.
Yes.
All the things that need to go to every single thing and the details that have to fall into a place for a child, right? Talking about just conception and the forming of a child. All of the millions, countless details need to fall into perfect place to bring a healthy child. It's unbelievable, okay? Miracles we got used to will manifest, and miracles we did not get used to, right? Also will manifest. Really, bottom line, everything is a miracle. There's just a whole bunch we got used to. Everyone calls it nature, yet there is measure for measure principle is what we got to get into now, okay? Because we know, bottom line, everything God does is measure for measure. Hashem tzilcha. Hashem is your shadow, okay? Simply the measure for measure principle is whatever measure a person measures out, in other words, how he behaves with the world, so it is meted out to that person from above. God will bestow upon you to the measure you treat other people and situations. If you behave with emunah, then God is totally connected to you and is able to now bestow upon you greater things. If you resist, right, then you block the flow. As an individual behaves with his fellow man with compassion and love, so it will be, heaven will behave with that way with the individual, but it is much deeper than that. The source the Talmud begins for the principle of measure for measure is quite remarkable. We learn it from the caption in the book of Kings about Elisha the prophet. Actually, it's brought down in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, where they actually say in the Mishnah over there in the Gemara in Sanhedrin that a person who does not believe in Techias HaMesim, the revival of the dead from the Torah, does not get revival of the dead. It brings down other things, other sins, that a person doesn't get the revival of the dead. But one of them is, if a person does not believe revival of the dead is from the Torah, he doesn't get up. That's kind of a really strict, extreme punishment, if we call it that. Just because I don't believe that revival of the dead is in the Torah, that's boom, like that. Well, it's measure for measure. If you don't believe, you don't get. And where do they get it from? Here, we got to go through this story. It's a great story, right? We learn from it. We learn it from the caption in the Book of the Kings about Elisha the prophet. Right? There was an Israelite city that was besieged by an enemy, which of course brought extreme famine to the city, to the point where women were starting eating their children. Actually, it was a case brought before the king, right? That these two women, each one had a child. They're starving in the city. One says, let's do your child and eat him today, and then tomorrow we'll do my child and eat him tomorrow. And what happened was, the mother A did A. They killed and ate their child. And then it was time for the next day, Mother B, she didn't want to give it up. So they came to court in front of the king. She didn't give up her child to be eaten by us. She didn't share it. The king was, that's enough. We've reached it. And he called for Elisha. They had been on the outs. They were not on the ins. Right? The king with Elisha weren't jiving. But he says, okay, we've reached what's called threshold. It's amazing, this word threshold. Really a dynamic concept. Really anybody could reach it in a minute. You just have to put yourself on threshold, and you can make any decision and do anything you want. Sometimes it takes this point to where the king says, okay, we got to do something. So they call Elisha. The king finally humbles himself to call the prophet for a remedy. The prophet Elisha stated, tomorrow wheat will be sold in the market for $1 a pound. I'm using just, American terms, just so we can grapple with it. Okay? The chief of the army, he hears this prophecy, and he goes, no way. Elisha answered him, okay, you won't see it. Right? You'll see it, but you ain't gonna partake. Okay? So what happened? There was a miraculous event that the enemy army that was surrounding the city in the middle of the night heard noises from afar, and they unanimously concluded that it was the Egyptian army coming to help the Jews. All right? So in other words, they obviously, this huge army that was besieging the entire city, surrounding a huge encampment, all of a sudden heard noises, and everybody fled in panic. Everybody. They left, right, the cigarettes on the ashtray, right? The eggs, bacon on the fire. Just took off. So here there were some starving lepers who were stuck outside the city walls, and they're starving. And they figure, something, we stay here, we're going to die. They're not going to let us into the city. There's no food there anyways. Let's go. Let's give ourselves up to the enemy. We'll be prisoners. Maybe we'll get a meal. If they kill us, they kill us. We're going to die anyways. Might as well, maybe we can get some food. So they decide we're going to go and give ourselves up to the enemies, right? They go, and what do? They find the entire camp is completely empty, right? The TV's still on, or whatever. They didn't have a TV, but whatever. You get when I drift, right? So they're amazing, this is amazing. There's a huge army base. All these provisions are left, and they're going, we can't take this for ourselves. It's not fair. We got to tell the people of the city. So they went and told the people of the city, and everybody came out, and they took all the spoils and brought it to the gates of the city, and lo and behold, right, wheat was selling at $1 a pound, right, in the city. Comes the chief officer, right, of the army to see it, and of course he gets trampled on by a crowd of people, right, a mob, and he dies. He saw it, but he didn't partake. Because why? And it's deep. His disbelief, right? Very scary. His disbelief earned him that experience. The idea here is very big, because measure for measure is a huge idea. If you don't believe, as my dad says, if you don't believe you can have it all, then you get to choose how much less than all you will have. Okay? So you got to shoot for the highest. Thank God we're entering the holy holiday of Shavuot, the giving of the Torah, the total instruction manual, how to have it all, which is really God, because God is everything.
But that's what I asked at the beginning. How can a 1-year-old have anything coming to him? What measure is there for him to have?
We don't know past lives. You can explain it with intellectual answers, and it's very hard, and there is no explanations. We don't know the entire journey of a soul. We don't know how this person needs this in order to build a vessel. We don't know. We just don't know.
Wait a second. You're talking on a physical level. We're talking on a spiritual level.
Well, the child who has this terrible thing happen may have a bad attitude because of it.
That's an approach to it. Lots of people are born with all kinds of disabilities. You have to, it's how you approach it.
This is for you personally. It's not for you, once again, and I say this in all the classes, to point fingers. Okay? It's for you to develop yourself and to expand your mind. Okay? And to be able to catch your limited beliefs, okay, and disown them. Okay? You have to mamish hefker, you have to mafkir, you have to abandon all your limited beliefs and go with God, because God is completely unlimited. Now, we look at the world, we have experiences in the world, and things are difficult for us. What we call hester panim. God hides his face. I don't see God in a 1-year-old kid that it could have that happen to him. Where's God in that, right? Okay, hester panim. God is hiding his face. What is our obligation? Okay, besides helping the kid or doing whatever mitzvahs, we don't know the journey of him, but what is your reaction? Your reaction is everything comes from God. Everything God does is for the best. We don't know the journey of this soul. You know, so my soul is, wow, it's a real hester panim, and therefore, thank you, God. You have to pray, thank you, God, for giving me the opportunity to ask you for more emunah and more bitachon and more trusting in you.
God spoke, and I speak from experience, okay? When God gives a little child this kind of a test, and it's a test.
A test of a little child?
Yes. Yes, believe it or not.
Why does a child deserve to have a test
I don't
that
know.
it can't pass?
Who says they can't pass?
Exactly.
Because I know the child.
You don't
I
know.
know
you
how
know
the
the
child
child.
turned out.
We never put
We're
a
talking about one person.
period where God puts a comma. We don't know the journey. We don't know the journey. We don't know the journey. And you're catching a little pixel in the middle of a journey, and you got a whole take on it, right? No, we don't see the whole picture. When you see the whole picture, I know you'll be blown away.
Yes, exactly.
Okay? I know you'll be blown
God gives
away.
this kind of a test to someone who can handle it. It's an honor.
Even
actually.
seems like they can't. Listen, my wife says all the time, I can't handle it. Okay?
But the child didn't handle it.
In your perception.
What do you mean the child didn't handle it? What happened to the child?
The child had a useless life.
Excuse
The
me?
entire life, and you saw them until they were 89 years old and passed away, and it was a useless life?
How's
Never.
useless?
We don't know.
No such
We
thing.
don't know.
There's no
We
such
don't
thing as
know. You don't know. You don't know. And you can come up with creative ways of what this person did in a previous life, and they had to go through this whole lifetime being in that state that they had to be in for how many years they had to be in. Because who knows what this person did in a previous life. It could be that they disabled somebody in a previous lifetime and caused them to suffer for how many years to be like that, because of their carelessness, and the soul volunteered to come down in this world and go through it in order to pay back, in order to rectify itself, okay? We don't know. We don't know, okay?
Well,
We don't know. But anyways, the point here is for you. The idea of measure for measure is for us, okay? To expand beyond our limiting beliefs, okay? Most of the people will, my dad, he came up with a great phrase, and it's not so much a question of these days of if you believe in God. The big issue is, what do you believe God is?
Yeah.
Okay? That's the big issue. Okay? Consider for a moment, by the way, I put down here in the note, God, how the enemy army would run in a miracle in the middle of the night. It's a huge encampment. All of a sudden, everybody just gets this frenzy and runs. God gets into the mind of anyone, including us.
A whole army.
A whole army. God gets into the minds of people. Oh, where's my free will? Listen, man, you're right. There's still free will, but he's in the heads. Okay, he gets in the heads, and he can do anything. There's nothing God can't do, and that's the biggest problem these days. One of them, in terms of our emunah, that we limit God. God forbid. That's idolatry. Okay, you don't limit God. Okay. Consider for a moment the notion of our beliefs and how they create our reality. That's what we're talking about. If you don't believe you can have it all, then you get to choose how much less than all you can have. Go figure. Okay? Let's do a little bit more. There's a cause and effect principle here to some degree. And that is, we do have to understand where it is. What are the guidelines? And that is until the Creator intervenes, which he often does. Okay? In other words, God allows us to partake and experience cause and effect because we see it. We use it all the time. We utilize it. And every single thing that we have in terms of all our technology is all through this. We understand that fire cooks. Okay? So, yet there's still, we'll say that the Creator does intervene. His agenda is to make us into vessels which we will receive the infinite light, whether we like it or not. His purpose will be fulfilled. I call him the spoiled king, because he's going to get what he wants. He is going to beat you like a coach, that you are going to get into spiritual shape in order to, and what you have to go through, how many lifetimes, whatever it's going to take for you to get there. There's that great story they bring about the guy who was the football coach. Somebody showed me that clip recently where they had to put somebody on the guy's back, and he has to do this weird crawl, and usually people only make it to the 20-yard line, and this guy made it to, some people probably the 50-yard line. In the clip, he made it all the way across the entire football field. He had to be blindfolded, and he had to carry somebody crawling across the field on his back, and he's pushing, right? And the coach is pushing him more and more, a little bit more, and finally he made it way beyond, right? Okay? So God is a coach. He's pushing us, okay? The problem is we don't think we can do X, right? We have the opportunity to create how we would like to become that vessel. And there are two schools in creation, the school of wisdom and what I call the school of hard knocks. Hard knocks, basically, is trial and error, right? Which is good. It's a good school. It works, right? Wisdom is a lot better, and it could actually be a lot more painful. The problem is people's egos get in the way, and they don't want to listen to people's advice. Or the Torah's advice, mostly. Really. The school of wisdom begins with thinking, emunah, faith. Always. You have to have emunah. You have to have emunas chachamim. Emunas chachamim, which means you have to believe in the sages. Right? There was that great story that we had, I think I mentioned it last week, about oral law. A guy says, same Gemara there. Guy says, I want to convert to Judaism on the condition that I'm only going to accept the written law, not the oral law. And Hillel was said, okay, so he's teaching him, this is an aleph, this is a base, this is a gimel. And the next day, he says, he mentioned 3 other letters. He says, this to the top is an aleph, this is a base. He says, wait a minute, you said this was an aleph. He says, you have to believe me on aleph base. So you got to believe me on everything. So you got to go with total oral law. It's amazing how people just think, yeah, this is an aleph. Yeah, where did you get that from? There's no verse in the Torah. Where's a verse in the Torah? You've been buying oral law your whole life, baby. Don't come to me that I don't accept oral law. Then you better be reading some other alphabet because you don't know what an aleph base. You're believing them for an aleph base. Why can't you believe them for all the other stuff? Amazing, huh? The school of hard knocks. Of course, then there's the school of hard knocks. When we don't wake ourselves up to our mission, when we have strayed from the path, or when we simply don't listen to the wise men who have been down that path time and time again and know the way. In other words, we will climb the ladder. Either we self-motivate ourselves, we awaken from ourselves, I got to climb, I got to go, I got to move, or you get stagnant, start sleeping, and Hashem's got to pot you on the tuchus, right, to get you to climb the ladder, but climb the ladder you will. Okay? So either wisdom to draw you up, which Baruch Hashem, right? The people here and the people listening, thank God for Torah, right? That's the modern cure. Torah is the modern cure. Okay? Before that, it was only hard knocks. Right? Okay, so we'll stop here in terms of, there's lots to explore, lots to think about in terms of measure for measure. Okay? We get what we believe. So you better believe in everything. You better believe in unlimitedness and stop limiting, God forbid, God. Okay? God is completely unlimited. And listen, He's very patient with us. Okay? It's believe it or not, it's a user-friendly universe. Okay? And we're all in training. Okay? But the idea here is to understand that when we're hit with a limited thought, okay, we got to deal with it and expand it. And the best way to do that is God's totally unlimited. There's nothing He cannot do by means of us. All right. We'll stop here.
It's very good. But, you need to, some of the stuff, I need to sit in the quiet